Now, we all know that analog horror is by far my favourite subgenre of horror, especially on YouTube, and it's basically my entire channel as a whole. However, it is very clear to me and a lot of other people that analog horror as it is at the moment on YouTube is becoming very stale and also becoming very unoriginal. Now, in my opinion, I feel this is really affecting the whole analog horror viewing experience, especially as someone who watches a lot of analog horror, whether it be week in, week out, especially more recently, and it is very difficult to actually differentiate a lot of other analog horror series from each other because they share such similar elements. And due to the fact that how similar these series are to each other, it is actually very difficult to see if analog horror can return to the high state that it was on YouTube so long ago. For example, we have my favourite series personally, The Walton Files. We are waiting on an episode since February that we were promised, and we still don't actually have an official release date of when that next episode is coming. For example, we've been waiting since February since the episode 4. Now, episode 5 was promised at the end of February, but then got pushed back to where we actually don't know anymore to when it is actually officially releasing. And so much so that even now and more recently, we have had a few analog horror series come up through the ranks. For example, the main one I can think of is Gooby and Friends, which basically involves this sort of hacker, but ultimately it is not as crazy as other people think. Don't get me wrong, it is a really original idea, and in my opinion is the best at the moment. As for example, Gooby and Friends is actually a really entertaining series, as it involves sort of this kind of entity intercepting valuable information on our actual main characters. It seems to me that he is actually taking kids through their TV screens while intercepting very valuable information about their lives. But you know what else is also really scary, and not even in analog horror but in the real life situations, is people actually stealing valuable information from you. And that is why we have partnered with Aura today, and they are our official sponsor of this video, and I really do appreciate for them sponsoring. And if you don't know what Aura is, let me explain it for you. Info such as your name, your address, your email, and your actual address, your home address, could be available online for data breachers to just swipe up like that in a click of a finger, and that is what's so scary. However, Aura provides a service that can ultimately protect you from those data breaches, as Aura helps me to see which data brokers have been selling my information and automatically submits opt-out requests all for me without me having to even lift a finger. That one notification can honestly save so much information being leaked and ultimately save you so much time and hassle, all from one click of a button. It doesn't just help me from hackers trying to breach my data and info, but also helps you clear spam from those pesky emails you're going to get all the time on your email. And we all know how that feels, where your emails is flooded with spam when we don't want to see that. Let's be real, it just gets on everyone's nerves. And a huge reason why I've partnered with Aura today is because you might think that you're safe with huge brokers such as AT&T. However, that company alone had 73 million customer records, both existing customers and previous customers who have partnered with them before. All 73 million customers who used to be with them and were with them at that current time had data leaked onto the dark web, and ultimately that is a super scary thought. However, Aura does that all for me and ultimately keeps me safe from hackers online and my information being leaked. And as someone who does a lot of things online, whether it be online shopping or ultimately just having contacts online, it is super important for me to keep my stuff all safe and sound while I'm shopping online. And thankfully Aura has partnered with me today. Give you guys a free 14-day trial of Aura today by using the link at the top of the description or the one right above my head right now. If you go to aura/horrorduty, you will get your 14-day free trial completely free with Aura, and as you can see, you will keep your information safe and your privacy all locked and secured. I value my privacy so much so that you should value yours, and if you go and use that link in the top of the description, you will keep your information all safe and sound. Thanks to Aura again for sponsoring this video, and of course it means so much to me, so definitely go check out that link in the top of the description and keep your information safe. But back to the video. Now, going back to why analog horror is becoming very stale at the moment is because of 4 easy things that go down in each video. Now, we all know the typical opening of an analog horror series, the introductory tape, and we all have known this because I've done this in one of my horror series, because realistically every single horror series starts off this same route, with introducing us to a place or a person or some sort of element of story, and normally has 1 or 2 scares while ending with a bit of reversed audio, or have some reversed audio in there at some point. Now, video 2, or part 2 of the first video, will always put more emphasis on our threat. For example, if we go off for episode 2 of the Walton Files, we had the whole Jack Walton popping up in episode 1, to where we jump to episode 2, where we get more emphasis on why Bond is so vicious, as we see him kill 3 people. So ultimately we have a lot of series that ultimately have a little bit more emphasis on the horror elements. For example, with Mandela Catalog, we have The Intruder and stuff like that, and ultimately the scene with the oh my god behind you. We have so many scenes like that, where episode 2 in my opinion seems to be always the more, you know, horror elements of each horror series, while episode 3 or part 3 will always be more explanation based, will always be more, you know, storyline. For example, Bunny Farm. Now personally I haven't, you know, watched much of the Mandela Catalog. I just watched episode 1 and 2, but ultimately I know there's a lot of series out there that normally the third video has a lot of, you know, plot being dropped and a lot of exposition and ultimately explaining the story, because in my opinion in analog horror, if you don't explain the story within the first 3 episodes, I think it can get really boring or ultimately just really confusing. And then episode 4 or part 4 will always just continue the series until it eventually dies off, because for me I feel like with a lot of analog horrors they just continue due to the success, so ultimately a lot of the story is kind of dragged out. Now for me the Walton Files is kind of perfect in a way where it doesn't exactly drag its story out, but there is a very valid argument that episode 4, which we waited 3 years for, kind of just tells the exact same story that was told to us in episode 2 of the Walton Files. Now don't get me wrong, I'm not complaining, I think episode 4 is an amazing episode, but I can definitely see the argument of people saying we're kind of just seeing the same things happen over and over. However, I do think that the Walton Files episode 5 and 6 will ultimately just kind of go into those little plot holes that we didn't know about in episodes 2 and 3. Now, if you have a lot of analog horror series in your head that you're kind of thinking, oh my god, all those 4 elements are in those series, and you're kind of thinking, okay Cal, I need a proper series that I'd like to sit down and watch that has a good story, good episodes, and ultimately just good horror. If you want to go and watch a series like that, the one series I would recommend, if wasn't the Walton Files, would be The Children Under the House. Now this story is absolutely captivating. I think I've made a reaction video on it absolutely ages ago. Now to me, I haven't made an analysis video on it, but that will be coming soon, don't you worry. But for me, when it comes to The Children Under the House, it is such an amazing story. I'm not going to say anything about it just for the fact that it's so good. You have to go watch it for yourself. I'll leave it one of those card things in the top right of that video, so definitely go check it out. I would highly recommend it if you find analog horror at the moment to be a little bit stale. But moving on, even some of the reaction channels when it comes to analog horror have slowed down ultimately a lot of the reaction videos to analog horror, and I will happily put my hand up to that. As you can see on my channel, we haven't been doing a lot more live streams when it comes to analog horror at the moment, because personally I am just really getting sick of analog horror at the moment. I really think that there is some very stale elements to it, and to me I definitely feel that we need, you know, the blockbuster like Walton Files to drop to kind of bring us all back to analog horror, in my opinion. But even when you look at the likes of MatPat, we don't really get reactions from him if it's not, you know, the Walton Files, the Mandela Catalog, or the real mainstream analog horror series. Or for example with film theory, we won't really see many film theories on the likes of, you know, the lower end of analog horror. You'll kind of have like Boysver, as it's really confusing. We'll have obviously Dr. Nowhere, and we'll also have the Walton Files, and I'm pretty sure he done one of Gooby and Friends as well, which is really impressive, by the way. That's the one I'm really happy is getting some recognition now. And ultimately all these things in question, with the lack of content in analog horror, the lack of creativity in my opinion, the one in my opinion that's been more recent that's really interesting is the whole Batman analog horror. I do think that's really cool and interesting, but the fact that it's all of a sudden now we're getting, you know, Spider-Man analog horror, we're getting the Flash, you know, that sort of thing, where it's kind of just repeating itself with the whole unoriginality now. It is really annoying that the fact that one thing that works well will ultimately be twisted and be, you know, kind of dragged out, and I do feel that can be quite annoying. But ultimately it does beg the question, is analog horror dying off, or is it just getting that little bit more boring? I really don't like saying that, because I love analog horror and it is literally what my whole channel is based on, and I love it so much, but I really hate seeing the way it is at its current state. But let me know what your thoughts on analog horror is at the moment in the comments below. If you have any series that I actually should be checking out that will honestly just twist my mind and help me realize that analog horror isn't getting boring, I just haven't been looking hard enough, definitely let me know in the comments below. And thank you so much for watching this video, and again thank you so much to Aura for sponsoring this video. Definitely go check out the top of the description below and get your 14-day free trial today. But thank you all so much for watching. I appreciate every single last one of you guys, and of course have the most amazing day. Stay safe and peace. First shot of this episode, Tammy picks this house.
Oh, what about that one?
Now if you ask me, that is the, you know, worst house you can pick. It has wallpaper on the outside.